Hey, down there, honey. Let's check that out. Yeah, this isn't too bad. Needs a little spit shot and elbow grease, but I think we can make something work. I always did kind of want a fixer-upper. Alright, let's get to it. Snow White 2025 opens with the backstory to Snow White getting her name, not as a physical description of her skin or the purity of her character, but rather the blizzard that trapped her and her parents in a carriage on the road where her mother gave birth to her. I'm not kidding. That's exactly what happens. Anyway, the kingdom is sunshine and rainbows until the movie remembers it's a Disney movie and promptly Disney's the mother. Sometime later, Gal Gadot slides into the king's DMs. Eventually they're married, so she gets her visa or whatever, and then out of nowhere, rumors of a war with a country to the south spread. The king then leaves for battle, never to return, resulting in the evil queen's takeover. Many of the citizens are conscribed to become soldiers, and eventually, according to the narration, the people even forget there was ever a princess. Now grown up, Seaside Mahogany cleans the castle as a part-time Cinderella when someone is caught trying to steal food. Desert Tan pleads for his life and eventually sets him free. Her and the queen then have a lazy presentation of views in which the queen says you must rule through power, while Coffee Chestnut says you should rule by the people. After the disagreement, the evil queen finally decides that this would be the best time to kill Beach Beige instead of all of the years prior, but alright. At an apple orchard, the huntsman warns Foreshore Khaki to flee. Doing so, she tumbles through the scary woods, clips through the floor, ends up in an underground river, then beaches herself like Arnold in Predator. The animals all come together and bring her into the cottage where she promptly passes out in completely soaked clothes. Next, we're introduced to the 7 dwarves, with personalities so sandblasted you'd be hard-pressed to figure out which ones are which just by looking at them. There they find Cliffside Auburn, and all the character development born of her staying with them and learning that she's the princess and teasing Grumpy and all of the other interactions are thrown out the window because she simply wants to leave, but because of the rain, she ends up staying the night. The next morning, the dwarves tussle and Dopey is laughed out of the room. Now, this is where the story changes lanes so hard it would cause a multi-lane pileup with significant changes from the original, beginning with Dopey receiving the most attention, not Grumpy. I'll discuss that later, so don't worry. In the meantime, Dune Sepia cheers Dopey up by teaching him how to whistle, and she rallies the dwarves to clean the house. Dirty Coconut then leaves in hopes of finding her father when she bumps into the guy from earlier and what we originally thought to be the 7 magical creatures. Yep, they are in fact real, and not the dwarves we thought they were. Instead, they are 7 bandits who rob from the rich and give to the poor, because that has never happened before in a Disney movie. Of course, Dustbuff falls head over heels for the leader, Jonathan, and after the 7 Redditors are about to be captured by the guards who were sent to hunt down the princess, she leads the guards off. Later, after reuniting with the 7 climate activists, turns out one of the soldiers stayed behind for some reason, and he takes a shot with a crossbow. But Jonathan prevents the movie from getting a 10 out of 10 on IMDb by taking the crossbow bolt for her. He's brought back to the cottage where Doc patches him up and the group celebrates. The next morning, Mud Umber stays at the cottage, the 7 reshoots head to the mine, and the 7 Tesla protesters run off, distracting the approaching guards. Later, the Queen, having learned of the huntsman's betrayal and transforming herself, shows up at the cottage, convincing Smut Wen she knew her father. Then this retard takes the apple she is offered as a snack for the road and bites it right away. The Queen gloats as mental deficiency collapses, and the dwarves arrive just too late. In the aftermath, the dwarves do not place dead Doornail in an ornate glass coffin. Instead, they put her on a rock, which is decorated with, as I can best describe, arched tent poles wrapped in water noodles that have been stuck with fabric flowers you could buy at Michael's. I couldn't possibly tell you where the budget went, guys. Anyway, in the prison, John and the huntsman escape and split up. John finds Corpse Maroon, kisses her, and again, this prick prevents the movie from a 10 out of 10 rating by reviving Farquaad's daughter. And then she comes up with a plan. A planny plan. A plan that's so planny, and in no way, shape, or form is brought about by the lack of oxygen to her brain for the last day or so, because in order to defeat the Queen, she thinks she's gonna walk right the hell up through the front doors unarmed and have a talk. Sorry, but it didn't work for Invincible, it ain't gonna work here. So the Queen's guards grab her, and one of them is about to kill her when something happens. So remember how Dust Beaver's position was to rule by the people? Well, I'm convinced Shane Black had a writing credit because her superpower is autism. Kobacha practically doxes everyone by naming the guards around her, their prior occupations, how many family members they have, what they want to do with their lives, and might as well prattle off their credit card information while she's at it. This turns the guards against the Queen, who then flees into the castle. Then in her private chamber, after the mirror does not give her the answer that she wants, the evil Gimp, in a rage, shatters her mirror, like her ego, cause fuck all the media literacy morons, and it disintegrates her, turning her into ash, where she's sucked into the mirror. And then everyone dresses in white and celebrates as Silt Sable becomes the Queen, and this long-quenched bowel movement finally ends. This movie is as bad as we thought it would be, and no amount of corporate suppression is going to prevent the easy 100+ million loss that will come from this movie. Let's start with the cast. I feel bad for Gal Gadot, because this movie seems like it tried to sabotage her at every step of the way. She's very attractive, but great Gilliman's gonads, why the fuck did the costume designer put her in sequined latex? I'm not kidding, she's one zipper away from a gimp suit, and oh lord, the sound mixing doesn't do it any favors. When she's in the skin-tight condom, every movement, no matter how small, sounds like balloon animals fornicating. And if she's in the sequined costume, those same movements are accompanied by the rattling of a janitor's keyring. And just when I thought my ears would heal as her costume noises were a distant memory, I wasn't prepared for her singing. I ain't got the room to talk, but I swear to God, I walked outside the theater and there was a crime scene where investigators were trying to figure out why birds were popping. The character ain't that intelligent either. In the original, the Queen was tricked by the heart of a pig. That makes sense. But here, she's too stupid to open the box and check what's inside because the huntsman placed an apple in it. Hell, at the end when she's got Sod Top at her mercy, she doesn't just kill her. She has a guard do it. And I don't want to hear the, oh, but she never does the killing herself because even the apple wasn't literally by her own hands. This broad was willing to transform herself into Diane Feinstein and went alone into the woods with nothing but a poison apple to kill someone because she's jealous of her looks. There are also conveniently no guards in the prison where Jonathan and the huntsman are because the Queen's intelligence is as malleable as Play-Doh when the script demands. There is nothing she isn't willing to do, and she's selectively stupid, so I don't buy any of these arguments. Moving on, Disney messed up these dwarves something fierce too. It's bad enough the CGI is rough despite the extensive reshoots that must have taken place, but even then their motion is stiff. Even the designs suck. I would think you guys are smart enough to figure out which ones are Doc, Dopey, and Grumpy, but can you figure out who the other four are from this image? Probably not, and I wouldn't blame you. Sneezy, Sleepy, Happy, and Bashful. Sneezy hardly ever sneezes. Happy is not happier than anyone else. Sleepy's narcolepsy only kicks in when the animators have to animate him, and Bashful has as much personality as concrete. This brings me to one of the major changes from the original. The focus shifting from Grumpy to Dopey. I mentioned in my discussion how great the impact of a good woman in a man's life can create great change within him. Snow White's teasing of Grumpy and yet unconditional affection towards him, like the others, eventually breaks down the walls of this grizzled and stubborn man. To the point, as I said, he leads the charge to save her, and when they failed, he breaks the hardest and is the one who places his bouquet of flowers in her hands. This movie discards all of that because Dopey gets all of the attention. You see, Grumpy and Dopey are not their namesakes. Grumpy is now misunderstood, and Dopey is victim. Yep, when Dopey is left out of the cottage and Rock Autumn talks with him, he acknowledges he never speaks for fear of ridicule. Yep, he can talk, sing, whistle, whatever, but he chooses not to because the others will bully him. And despite the focus, Dopey doesn't do anything the original Grumpy did either. Grumpy places his bouquet on the ground. Dopey doesn't have one. Doc is the one who realizes ground walnuts in danger, and at her funeral, neither of them breaks down in the manner that they did in the original. I'm confident this is because the dwarves were not supposed to be in the movie as they were portrayed. This coincides with the 7 Discord mods. When this image was leaked a few years ago and the internet mocked Disney, I bet they immediately removed many of their scenes, but didn't want to cut them out entirely as they were crucial to the rebellion aspect of the narrative. Seriously, out of nowhere, Peter Twinklage at one point admits he's in a relationship with Adventure Crime over here, and up until this point, there wasn't a line of dialogue or single scene of camaraderie amongst them until the celebration of Jonathan's recovery. Their names aren't even said on screen. This tells me the reshoots either weren't enough to recompile a cohesive version of the movie, or the behind the scenes were so chaotic, even with the delay, the editor couldn't make it work. Hell, I don't believe the relationship between Granite Turpentine and Jonathan was originally fleshed out as it is. Most of the scenes they were in together are heavy on CGI, as much of the movie is. But other scenes, like the one where they have a duet, is flat like a TV sitcom. This is true for many shots, like the celebration at the end, where they actually stuffed Rachel Zegler in Farquaad's wedding costume. Not gonna beat those allegations, guys. Speaking of her, let's get to Dirt Brown herself. First off, this is admittedly very petty, but the movie agrees with me Zegler is not attractive. If she and I were the last people on Earth, I think I'd rather attach a baseball mitt to a surfboard than deal with her Austin Powers back hair. The Queen's death proves this when she asks the mirror one last time, and the mirror responds, to paraphrase, "Your beauty is known, but Snow White's beauty comes from within. That is what makes her the fairest of them all." I don't know why anyone thought Gal Gadot would ever be jealous of Zegler's looks, but I'm glad people online have made an effort to correct this. Anyway, the deeper issue is how the positivity of the character from the original animated classic is here, but there is a disingenuous air about her. Let me explain. She is positive in her treatment of characters like Dopey and getting the dwarves to clean the cottage together, sure, but Zegler's mannerisms betray this kindness, and I'm not talking about her real-life personality. The name Snow White isn't solely a physical description of the character. It also describes her purity, to the point of youthful naivety when she falls for the magic wishing apple ploy, which actually does play out in the end. The 2025 movie tries to ham-fist these traits in, which clash with the girl boss crap this movie goes with. And the evidence of this is how the script throws her wit and intellect away to force her to bite the apple. She has no reason to trust the hag. No one knows she's out here, and the hag was looking for her specifically. Oh, but the hag presented her own necklace that she gave to Jonathan. That should be the red flag. This iteration of the character knows the Queen wants her dead, has the initiative to rebel against her stepmother, seeks her father, outwits the soldiers, and sides with the 7 Greenpeace volunteers. To believe the hag is to disregard the independent girl boss, I'm a wise individual build-up throughout the movie in order to reintroduce the classic blissfulness of the original character. This is what I'm talking about. You cannot mix oil and water. No matter how you try to cover up the love me or else girl boss, the foundation and ideas of the trope are antithetical to classical femininity, and this movie proves you can't have it both ways. This is why I said she's disingenuous. Her actions betray what the movie tries to present. The forcing of key moments, the I'm holier than thou communist utopia bullshit, and the severe lack of all of the 7 bandits scenes because of extra editing all proves this. This movie doesn't portray Snow White as a pure, humble, supportive, and encouraging woman. It's a sloppy, hastily re-edited mess that puts on the dress but can't fill it out. This is why Snow White 2025 is an abysmal failure, and right now is actually beating out Dragon Ball Evolution for the worst movie rated on IMDb. Here's to hoping Disney finally starts to turn their shit around. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.